very quickly, people. Tactical analysis business. Let me move this away. Let me have some of my green tea. People, tell me if you can hear me in a couple seconds. Can you guys actually still hear me? I had to, obviously, for obvious reasons, just move the mic. Please tell me if you can still hear me. Don't make me look like an idiot. Please tell me if you can still hear me. Now, if we get ourselves into the game, let me remove the screen for you guys. It's so hard holding this in for like when there's a thingy. Apologies for messing up the green screen, but as you saw, Brighton are the blue, we're the red. And yeah, man, we set up in what I liked, the positives. Where are we? Brighton are attacking this way, we're attacking that end. Obviously, in theory, you know, Smith Rowe was very good. You know, you saw Smith Rowe getting into these areas and linking up with Martinelli. You saw him going out to the right-hand side in the second half expertly. You know, it was great. But one thing was harming us, I think, in the first thing for me that was harming us in the opening period after a promising 10 games. When you've got a team like Brighton, you know, they've got 5 in midfield, you know, they're just going to do this. You know, you saw it until they saw that, yo, Arsenal are not really showing much and they tried to have more of a go. You're going to see this 11 men behind the ball. And I think that's where we struggled. Aubameyang was isolated, you know. Smith Rowe, you saw him. It was good that he was clearly told to buzz around, but you saw him vacating his position and going here, there, and everywhere. You know, you saw Martinelli come quite narrow as well. You had well, that's their centre half. You had, you know, Smith Rowe buzzing all over. You had Martinelli, who should be holding his position, coming inside. You know, Bukayo Saka is having to stay at the halfway line to receive the ball, and that's not a problem. You know, if I'm playing Dan Burn and Bukayo Saka, and he burned him in the second half when there was space, but if there's no space and he's on the halfway line, I don't mind it because I can get tight, concede a foul, or if he gets past me, like you saw, how many blue shirts is Bukayo Saka going to fall into? And I think that's happened to Pepe as well. You know, we need to work on what we're doing. And I think the midfield weren't brave enough in possession generally. I think second half, Xhaka displayed stuff, but we were struggling. We were struggling to play 5-yard passes. There was a lack of quality on the ball. And I think you could see our players, and this is where the young players showed their inexperience. You know, Martinelli was coming extremely narrow. Smith Rowe was all about the plays. You know, Aubameyang was isolated and was just playing poor. Bukayo Saka's having to go here to receive it, people. So you can see how we're in a lot of trouble, people. Share my screen again. This is exactly what I meant, people, by that. Like I said, you know, our attacking players are having to be quite narrow because it's a mixture of the way Brighton are setting up, the way we're playing, and the lack of, you know, there is a lack of movement, but I saw movement in the first 10. I just didn't see ball players. You know, you need brave midfielders, and I think we was lacking that. And I think we was lacking overall quality on the ball. You know, at a point, Leno's had more touches than Martinelli and Aubameyang because them two there being isolated. So there was a lot. Like I said, there was no out ball, whether we're playing out from the back, we were just giving it away. I didn't feel the midfielders were showing. And go back and watch the game 4 minutes in, people. You could see Bukayo Saka turn Dan Burn. And that was a sign of things to come, in my opinion. Ultimately, you know, in the first half, I think, like I just said, we isolated our attackers. I don't think we had bravery on the ball. I don't think we had galvanization. I think the way we started and played against Chelsea, where we had protagonists, is not that we was playing poor, but I think a lot of that escaped us. The link-up play wasn't just there. And, you know, for me, again, you don't shoot, you don't score. You know, we had one effort on target in the first half, which was Xhaka's free kick. Well, yeah, we had one shot, I believe, and I don't even think Xhaka's was on target. So we had one meaningful shot. So again, very toothless. Didn't ask questions of that Sanchez brother in goal. Second half, I think we was more aggressive. You know, our passing was better. The game became a bit open and whatnot. And I think on the counter, as you saw, our players them look dangerous. You know, You know, as you lot saw, Brighton grew into the game, and gaps started to open up in the team. You know, they stopped having 11 men behind the ball, and they said, cool, let's try and get forward a bit. And because of that, they might have had one man there and stuff like that, and they had their back three. Because of that, you started to see gaps opening. You saw Tierney going. Bellerin, to be fair, if he had a good game. Saka's immediately got a lot of space now, people. And is it any coincidence that, you know, I think there's about 8 or 9 passes that for Saka's goal. It starts with Leno, and I can't remember who else gets it, but eventually I think it's actually Holding that plays it into Bukayo Saka. He's got a little bit of space. Dan Burns done well at fullback, but he's not a natural fullback. He's a centre half doing a good job at left back, and he showed it, people, with that. He tries to get tight, gets turned, sat on his ass, and obviously my man's gone. Lacazette off the bench, obviously bangs and scores, and that's because there's a lot of space. And obviously in the second half, people, you started to see a lot of space opening, people. As you know, I'm just doing random stuff so you can see. I'm trying to make a picture of the space opening. You know, what did you see? Smith Rowe came into his own. How many times was Smith Rowe out here fashioning smart 1-2s with a Martinelli, and obviously with Tierney? Let's say T for Tierney and an M for Martinelli. How many times? You know, there was one instance. It was a throw-in from Tierney to Smith Rowe, and Martinelli funded it over, and Aubameyang had a couple of efforts in the second half he should have done better with, of course, people, but the game was open, and I think that's really what helped, because how many times did you see Smith Rowe on the halfway line playing cute little 1-2s or spinning and linking up well? Even Lacazette, when Lacazette came on, he drops deep, and how many times did you see these three in particular playing triangles? I was really impressed with that, people. On the counter-attack in the second half, I was really impressed. There was 10 times more bravery in possession, you know. I don't know if it's El Nene putting on gloves now. I don't know if it was the fact of, El Nene putting on gloves. I don't know if it's the fact of he's wearing long sleeves, but El Nene is skipping out. You know, one thing that annoys me about Arsenal is sometimes you need to skip out the centre halves. Not everybody needs to control the ball. I'm dropping bare stuff. I just want to show you like this, people. You know, I'm going to use the other side to make it easier. You know, sometimes you can skip out a centre half. You know, you don't. Apologies, people. These lot are the fullbacks. Let me make El Nene another colour. Playing out from the back, I think you need bravery. You need people to... let's get Xhaka in there as well. You know? Playing out from the back, people, you need bravery. You need 100%... Apologies. You need 100% bravery. You know? Man need to be brave. Now, obviously, if you was to do it to scale, let's just say these X's are opposition players, people. Just so it looks like we're being pressed. People need to show for the ball. I think sometimes when Leno's got possession, he has to go long to Aubameyang if it's here, because there's no other option. And obviously, if it goes long, 9 times out of 10, Aubameyang's not a physical presence. He's going to lose out in it. It's as simple as that. But there's never any options. Sometimes I think we're too slow. You know, sometimes, and again, not to scale, it might go from Leno to one of this midfielders, and then, you know, Bellerin's there. Can we just hit that first time to Bellerin, and then he can go on his bike and link up other men? You know, can we palm that first time and get going? Or can we palm that first time into Tierney? Why is it we have to go, all right, cool, you have the ball, then you give it to your fullback? Why can't we just see a man running and clip it in behind? And I think second half, we saw a bit more of that. We was a bit more aggressive in our play. We had a bit more protagonists on the football field. And I feel the counter-attack is what I saw most benefit with Smith Rowe, with Lacazette when he came on, with obviously Bukayo Saka and obviously Martinelli, as usual, the usual suspects, man. We need to build around them young players, in my opinion. We need to remember they're young men. They're going to struggle. There's going to be games they all play poorly. And I'm waiting to see what happens when fans eventually do see that from Martinelli, because there has been signs, is what it is. And like I said, second half, I think they gave us way too much time on the ball. I think, you know, maybe they started to tire out. You know, I just think it was good to turn it around in the second half and things, but it's more of the same. It's simply a tale of two halves at Arsenal currently. You know, we weren't really at it. It's not that we was poor in the first half. We just simply weren't at it enough. We needed to be at it a lot more. We needed to. Same way we started against Chelsea, we need to start a bit more. We need to be a bit more ruthless. I don't think we tested the keeper enough in that first half. Second half, there's reaction, but sometimes you're not always going to get that reaction, people. You're not always going to get that. Like I said, there was 9 passes between the defenders / Xhaka and Saka for setting up Laka. What a tongue twister that is. El Nene is. I know you also, he got his long sleeves out. It's a cold day, and you also saw Smith Rowe change his boots. Ultimately, for me, people, it's 2 wins. They're great, but we still need players, and I think we still need to keep the pressure on the board and those above. You know, with these wins, we've kind of shut up about it. We need business. You can be linked with Isco and all these men until you're blue in the face. Something needs to be done, because what happens when Smith Rowe, Martinelli, and Saka are doing well? We shouldn't be over-relying on these young players. It's testament to them, but it also says how poor we are as a football club, people. We shouldn't be relying on them. Look at Saka in that first half. He didn't have the best of games in that first half. It shows his mentality because he's turned it around, but our game shouldn't be decided on a 19-year-old that was nowhere near the first team 2 years ago. And I'm not saying that to criticize Saka. I love the guy. I think he stands up to be counted. He starts every week. But for me, it's not that it's unnecessary pressure because it comes with the territory, but for me, this should send shockwaves throughout the club that we're not. It's not that we have a system or an environment where we've got players that we can lean on and actually rely on, and these young players are thriving. We're literally relying on these young players. We know they're young, but Martinelli is playing because he's the best one at the moment. Saka as well, and we shouldn't. These young players, they will go through spells of inconsistency, and we need to prepare ourselves because we're not going to be out as a team. It's no coincidence our young players turned on the style. We played better because the experience of Bambi, and I'm not turning on him, he was missing chances. Fair enough, Lacazette came off the bench and did his thing, but it's mainly the experienced players that need to wake up and need to. So this is why we need to keep the same energy. And away from the young players, or in fact, keeping on that, we know these young players are still young. They're still trying to add consistency in their game. They're still hot and cold. These first team players are. We can't get gassed. Bellerin, big up Bellerin, because I think Bellerin was a constant thorn down the right-hand side and looked well. And I'm even seeing people praise him for because he's got one of the hardest jobs in the system. Be serious now. Modern day football, of course, a fullback has one of the hardest jobs to do. He's got to be up and down. He can't be switched off. What nonsense. And I like Bellerin, but at the same time, he's been good for 2 games. What are we going to get in the next 2? El Nene, he's been dropping off for me in the last 4 or 5 games. What level of performance are we going to get from El Nene? Do you get it, people? A lot of these players, Lacazette's been in good form. We've also seen him go through iffy form. There's a lot of hot and cold players here, and not too many players can be relied upon. We big up the Xhakas and Bellerins and El Nenes for their performances, but are we going to get the same all year? You can bet your life Martinelli, Saka, and them man there, they'll have the occasional bad game, but their form isn't going to curtail too much, or at least I think so. So, like I said, it's 2 good wins. We're getting some confidence, but we need to remember, bare of these players, sadly, are hot and cold, and we need business. We need a creative man, because what happens when Smith Rowe gets injured or Smith Rowe has an iffy game? What happens? What happens if Martinelli's injured? What happens if Saka is injured? Because Saka is getting fouled game in, game out. I think statistically, he's one of the most fouled players. There is going to touch wood. There is going to be injuries and things like that. We need to prepare ourselves. And it's great that these young players are getting chances, but we also need to protect them. And I don't feel the club is protecting them too much, because if they were, they would bring in certain players that could help them. Looking at the stats, people, as well, for those of you who care, since the start of last season, Bukayo Saka has provided 15 assists in all comps for Arsenal, more than any other player at the club. These are all courtesy of Opta, and better yet, the Twitter account Orbino, as you lot know. Arsenal have scored just 7 goals across 8 Premier League games this season, which, again, we know we're not prolific. We showed it in that game. There was actually large periods of that game where we actually didn't have the most shots on target, or efforts and whatnot. It was all Brighton, even in the first half, really. As I said, Saka was fouled 4 times, the most on the field. Smith Rowe was fouled twice. Arsenal had 10 shots. We struggled in the first half, but in the second, we had 10 shots, which is the joint most we have managed in the second half of a Premier League game this season. I'd imagine Chelsea is also up there. We had more shots within the first 5 minutes of the second half than the whole of the first, which again tells you we're not necessarily starting games in the best of fashion or in the right way. All 5 of Lacazette's Premier League goals this season have been the opening goal of a game. I swear Lacazette bagged against Liverpool. He's bagged against Liverpool. I could be wrong. He had a good game against United. He played well against against Chelsea. Lacazette's done all right. Lacazette scored 3 in his last 3 games. Lacazette scored away from home, which is crazy as well, people. Shout out to Lacazette. Maybe he's playing for a new deal. With that, though, and it tells you where we are as a club and why I keep urging caution, and we need to be on this club's next to act, Back-to-back Premier League wins is great, but it's the first time we've done it since September. That's not the consistency to have any sort of season. Like I was saying with the first half, that free kick from Xhaka was our first shot, so there wasn't any shots on target. We just had 1 shot, which again tells you we're not starting well. We're not being protagonists. If you don't shoot, you don't score. We need to heed that advice, people. There's no point showing it one game in and not doing it for the rest. That was the fewest we had in the first half for Arsenal all season, and again, it's still very much a tale of 2 halves. Considering we just played Chelsea and we started like that, you again have to look at the mentality of the players and question what's going on, people. Personally, should we look at what Mikel Arteta has had to say in relation to that game, people? Let's do that. What are you lot saying as well? Make sure you're hitting the like button. Come on, man. Let's get the likes up, man. Let's get the likes up. Come on, man. Bro, he was getting chopped down, and it comes with the territory, man. It comes with the territory. When you're a creative player, and the way these players are, you have to expect it. You have to expect to be chopped and cut up and studs in the back and all of these things. This is why we have to protect these young players, man. My man DG brought out the dry erase board. Come on, man. You know, those of you that mess with my tactical reviews, that's what we do. Obviously, one day we'll have the Sky Sports set up. Maybe I can be like Gary Neville pulling things apart. But right now, you have to take it old school and use what you can. Now, Mikel Arteta's probably in a happy mood yesterday on securing back-to-back victories. I said last week that that's the best medicine against any illness in football is to win football matches. We've done it 2 in a row in a really different way because they are 2 very different opponents. But I think we did it today in a convincing way. Second half was convincing. Same old problems kind of remained, in my opinion. You know, Saka, he was limping. He has taken a couple of knocks, and this is what I mean by we have to protect, man. You know, there's a lot of talk of the COVID 2-week break, and obviously Arteta is not going to be against anything that can protect lives. Lacazette scored after 21 seconds, super sub. He said, I think this is what all managers dream of, to bring people off the bench and they win you the game like he's done tonight. I think he's been in really good form over the past few weeks. He's been scoring goals. He's full of confidence. And today he had a sore back, so he couldn't start the game, but he came on and won the game for us, which is massively important. So sore back, not a funny man thing. You know, sore back. Again, that's probably why he didn't start. And we're all looking at like, boy, he should have started and things like that. And I'm happy for Lacazette because he's not setting the world alight. But just a couple months ago, he was a cut-up figure of his former self. You lot saw it, man. He was shattered. And strikers are confidence, man. You know, a couple of goals, couple positive performances, and he's doing all right again. And regardless, you know, I don't believe in Williams, Xhaka, Bellerin. I never want them to not be confident. I want them to be confident. You know, I'll always support any player that's playing for Arsenal Football Club, but I can question if you're good enough. He bigged up Lacazette's composure. You know, he said it's a great move from Bukayo. We all know it was. It was his movement and it was a counter move. You know, he made space. There was a lot of space opening and we saw it. As you lot know, I'm not going to bore you with that. We all know Saka is very mature on the football field. When asked on the confidence, he said, absolutely, especially in this Christmas period as well. We know how much we needed the wins. We had a really tough week and it wasn't that much about our performances. It was about our results. You know, well, it's about both. Results are all that matters. Performances haven't 100% been there. Even in the Brighton game, it weren't appalling, but there were several things that we question mark in relation to the first half. Personally, he said, we have managed through this period to maintain our spirit and cohesion. Sometimes it isn't easy to do because obviously the frustration that comes out with defeat is normally an effect on the team. When asked on if Lacazette stepped up, he said, we need big players and senior players to step up in these difficult moments, and he's doing that for sure. Front players need their teammates to support them and put them in situations like he had today as often as possible. It's true. You know, we're not creating enough for our men and whatnot. You know, I felt we're not creating enough for Aubameyang, but at the same time, man need to create things themselves. And I've said that in previous videos. And like you can see here, he's also said that at the same time, they have to step up and create these opportunities themselves. I think Laka has been working really hard since I've been here. His work has never been an issue. His goal scoring record could improve, but it's improving because he's willing to do so for us. And that, what has that told you? You know, Arteta's challenged you to score more goals, simply put. You know, on why he didn't start, as you lot could see, he had a sore back and things like that. And he said it here. We knew that Gabby wasn't going to last for 90 minutes. And again, maybe that's a lot. Gabby's had a lot of games to play of recent. He gave a high energy performance against Chelsea. He played against City. And obviously, we need to remember he's coming back from injury. And remember, there might not be too much in those legs as well. So it makes sense, obviously, now as a fan hearing these things. On what he said to his team at halftime, he said, we had 2 issues in the first half. First of all, the balls that we gave away were simple balls in our own half. And that's true, you know. And then he's holding on to the ball and losing it. We're struggling to make 5-yard passes. He said, when we were open and under no real threat. And that's true, you know, we was losing it. And he said, that's where they generated 1 or 2 chances. The second one was the way we attacked against that block. We weren't efficient enough. We didn't have purpose and we didn't have the right intentions with the players around the ball. And that's true. And that's, for me, it's down to the players to have the mentality to start in the same way against Chelsea. But again, I guess it's down to coaching and Arteta to make these things muscle memory, to do it to the point where we know no different. Because look at Arsene Wenger's team. We was criticised, rightly so at the time, criticised to the point where all we knew was 1,000 passes. It was muscle memory. Now, I'm obviously urging balance, but we need something along those lines, people, not these sort of isolated incidences. You know, he's obviously going to say I can't talk on individual players when asked about Isco. When asked about the young players, which was the highlight of the game, he said the youth is great, but you need the senior people and the senior players around them to guide them, to control them, and to give them to support as well. And which we've seen with Lacazette previously, Aubameyang, not always every player that's played. He said, we've been playing with young players since I've arrived here. Half true. We have given opportunities to many of those. To be fair, Joe, now Emil, Nelson's had a couple, Saka's getting some. You know, it's that hopefully Balogun and Tyrese and these man can. It's down to the players, really. He said now they're becoming more highlighted because of the results we've had in previous weeks, and now the results we are having with them a little bit more involved. But as well, I'd like to really respect the senior players and the work they've done for us throughout the year. And spots are earned. I don't want to see Willian, when allowed, to walk back into this team. I want, you know, he has to be back at the pecking order, you know, because these players are playing well. The right wing spot is Bukayo Saka's. It is Bukayo Saka's. And it kind of takes me on to my next point, people,